You are listening to Unified Through Chronic and Mental Illness with your hosts, Angie Roberts and Kimberly Murphy. Please be advised that some of the topics of this podcast can be triggering and sensitive in nature.
More than half of the people with mental illness don't receive help for their disorder due to the stigma that surrounds the illness.
Hey, Spoonies and mental health warriors. Welcome back to Unified. This is Kimberly Murphy here with Angie Roberts.
Hey, guys.
And today we are talking about ending the mental health stigmas. Now, we know we told you that we were going to have a mental health roundtable, and we actually missed last week because of family illness. And we know that those of you who are listening understand that the best plans don't always work out. If there's any audience that understands that better than anyone else, it's the chronic and mental health community. So thank you for understanding. We are doing something completely different than what we planned, but we hope that you will still take something from it and enjoy it. And we still wanted to honor Mental Health Awareness Month. So since we are talking about stigmas, Angie, why don't you tell us what a stigma actually is so everyone's on the same page?
A stigma is a negative and often unfair social attitude attached to a person or group, often placing shame on them for a perceived weakness. So unfortunately, individuals or groups can apply stigma to those who live a certain way, have certain cultural beliefs, or make lifestyle choices that they don't believe in, or to people living with certain conditions such as mental illness.
And that could also apply to chronic illness, actually.
Oh, definitely. It's stigma to death, too.
Right.
Our word choices contribute to social stigma that can further marginalize individuals of all backgrounds living with a variety of conditions, illnesses, and disabilities.
So I can really relate to this because lately a lot of people use the word bipolar to describe someone who's just kind of going off the rails.
Right.
And there's memes going around saying, she told me she was bisexual, but then I found out she was bipolar, there's all these like horrible jokes, but I can't stand it when people use the word bipolar to describe a bad relationship or a toxic relationship or someone who's involved in a relationship that's, not healthy, a person that's struggling with somebody, because I've seen that thrown around a great deal. In bad relationships, oh, she's just bipolar or whatever. Bipolar is a very serious disorder.
Right. Exactly.
And I think the more people use it to describe somebody who's just, really upset or acting, off the wall, or is having fights all the time in their toxic relationship, really kind of diminishes the seriousness of it. And people are less likely to get help for it because they don't necessarily want to accept the fact that they have it. It'll put them into tons of denial because they don't want to be viewed that way by other people, and they don't want to see themselves that way.
They don't want to be labeled.
Exactly.
And you get labeled.
Right.
That's the stigma issue, is labeling and stigma and just...
It makes it hard to tell other people about yourself as well. Even if you know the other person has the same illness, sometimes it's hard to really put yourself out there because you know that there's going to be some of these negative attitudes towards you. Or,
Definitely.
Maybe you're having a really horrible day and they're just going to be like, oh, she's just bipolar, or
she's a psycho.
Right.
She's psycho.
She's psycho. Or you have a legitimate concern. You have a legitimate gripe and they don't want to listen to you. And they just shrug it off as, oh, you're bipolar. I don't need to listen to you about this. So,
or you're just crazy.
You're crazy. There's another one. Yep. Crazy.
Please
psycho.
don't.
There was a guy I knew. And so I'm just going to say this, right? If any guy talks really bad about all their exes, run in the other direction. So that's my advice.
Absolutely.
But there's this guy who would always tell me all his exes were psycho. They're fine at first and then they're just psycho. And of course, the first thing I'm thinking is, what did you do to push them all to get so upset? because you're the common denominator. But I hate
Right.
the use of the word psycho. Like, that is a horrible word to use. The other thing that really irks me is when people say, I'm so depressed, when really they're just sad and it's like a passing moment. Because
Hmm.
a lot of people are like, what are you depressed about? Why are you sad? What can I do? How can I make you happy? They don't understand that depression is a condition. And using the word depressed to describe that you're sad is diminishing that condition, just like we were talking about with the rest of the conditions we
Right.
were speaking of before. So that really irks me. It really does. If you're really clinically depressed, there isn't anything your friends can do. They really can't do anything. You have to get treatment.
I mean, they can like stand beside you, but that's not going to heal you. If you want to be healed, you're going to have to go to treatment and
Right. It's not as simple as doing something to raise their mood. Like when someone's sad, you can lift up their spirits pretty easily. Um,
right.
but when
Yeah,
someone's chronically depressed, it's a whole different ballgame.
definitely. Another one I don't like is, when people just like their house to be neat and clean, or they just like to be orderly.
Hmm.
That people say they're OCD, when the OCD is a real disorder and it's a crippling disorder.
It is.
It's it's really a fearful disorder of a lot of things, and whatever they're in fear of.
Right. I mean,
Usually it's clean, germs and
mhm.
things like that, and their houses have, they do have to be perfect and dust free and germ free, and they're always cleaning things and checking things and stuff like that. But to say somebody has that disorder is really bad, because
I know, and they say it
it's
so lightheartedly. I'm so OCD. Ha 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 ha. Well, if you really were, and you really had to wash your hands 20 times before you do something, or you
Mhm.
had to check your locks 20 times before you go to bed, or you couldn't walk on lines in the sidewalk, or, I mean, these are things that definitely interfere with their lives on a regular basis. And if they don't do
Right.
things a certain way, they cannot function.
Some of them
So,
have to take multiple showers a day, like not
mhm.
two, like multiple, like
Right,
4 or 5 showers a day. Like that's just a lot added to your day.
it is.
Just that.
It
And
is.
it's really not fair. It's not fair for people to compare any of these illnesses to something that's just moderately going on
I don't
because
think that
of the
people
stigma.
really think about the actual meaning of
Right.
OCD, which is obsessive and compulsive behaviors. Um,
Right.
it's if you're not obsessively cleaning your house and you don't have a compulsion to clean your house, you're not
Right.
OCD. It's that
Right.
simple. It's
Right.
that simple. These are people who can't go to visit family members because they have to stay home and clean their house. Um,
Or when they come to your house, they're cleaning your house.
exactly. And
Like
it's the
they can't
only
help
way
it.
they feel okay. So
Right.
I wish people wouldn't use that either.
And these names just push people further away from going to seek help. And
Mhm.
I know that a lot of people don't realize that. And that's what we're trying to do this, trying to do this podcast to get the stigma out there and for people to understand what's going on
The
when
other
we
one
say
is
certain things.
skinny shaming. When
Oh
people
yeah.
are like, she's so anorexic, eat a sandwich. And you
Oh,
don't,
that's not nice.
right? And you don't know what's going on with that person. They may have a high metabolism. They may be an athlete. They may be, I mean, everyone has a different body type. And it, it's,
And
it's
how
kind of
sad if they have anorexia or
right.
body dysmorphia.
Yeah, it's the same as bipolar and not wanting to admit you're bipolar. If people are shaming skinny women or even skinny men and saying, oh my God, they're anorexic, it's automatically putting like such a negative connotation on that word, and it causes people to not want to admit that they have it.
Right.
And the first
Right.
way to get
Sure.
help is to admit that you have a problem. So if you can't even admit it to yourself, it's an issue,
Right. It
right?
is an issue. It
And
is an
so
issue.
there are three types of stigma. There's public stigma, like we're talking about, involves the negative or discriminatory attitudes that others have about mental illness. There's self stigma, which refers to the negative attitudes, including internalized shame, that people with mental illness have about their own condition. So just like feeling horrible and not wanting to admit it. And then there's institutional stigma, which is more systemic, involving policies of like government, private organizations that intentionally or unintentionally limit opportunities for people with mental illness. Examples would be like lower funding for mental health research or fewer mental health services relative to other healthcare, which we know is a huge problem in our country.
Well, I am researching that now, and let me tell you, this is going to be a good podcast show. That's going to be a good podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think there's a lot going on with insurance, especially that people are not aware of.
Stigma, prejudice, and discrimination against people with mental illness can be subtle or it can be obvious. No matter the magnitude, it can lead to harm. People with mental illness are marginalized and discriminated against in various ways, but understanding what that looks like and how to address and eradicate it can help.
And the stigma of mental illness is universal. A 216 study on stigma concluded there is no country, society, or culture where people with mental illness have the same societal value as people without mental illness. And that is so sad.
It's horribly sad.
It is sad. You don't have less value because you have an illness.
You don't have less value because you have cancer, but you have less value because you have bipolar disease or depression or PTSD or whatever you want to say, fill in the blank here. And
exactly.
That's just, do people understand, like, it's literally usually a chemical deficiency, and our brain can actually change, like from PTSD, your brain actually changes the way that it looks. So physically it does change.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's just so much to it that people don't understand. And they just
it's that brain and body connection that we're always talking about on our podcast. We have mentioned that so many times.
I honestly think that people do this because they're scared and they don't understand mental illness.
It's not okay, whether you understand it or not. It's not okay to take the value away from another person, to try to diminish their value is never okay. And the stigma of mental illness is universal. A 2016 study on stigma concluded there is no country, society, or culture where people with mental illness have the same societal value as people without mental illness. And that is so messed up.
So let's talk about some of those stigmas. People with mental health issues are violent or dangerous. Sorry, I just had to, I have broken, rolled my eyes. Really they say only about 7% of violent acts are committed by persons with symptoms of mental illness. So I don't understand I do. It's back to what we were just talking about, fear. Mm-hmm. People fear what they don't understand. You don't understand when a mentally ill person is going off because you don't understand that they're mentally ill. You just think they are crazy. Back to that word again.
Psycho.
Psycho or something
and,
like that.
We've done podcasts on people who have psychopathic tendencies.
Right. And
this is not anything like that. This is not what we're talking about. And
it's really not.
No, and people with mental health issues can be violent at times, but it's so small of a percentage, like you said. And it's just like, if somebody hears the worst story, and so now everybody with mental illness is like that. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know why people tend to do that, but they always take the worst story that they hear and then they just apply it to a whole entire group of people, which we all know is ridiculous.
Right. There's so many reasons you can have mental illness. And, it's.
I have to say too, and this is just me saying that, and if anybody out there has different statistics, please let us know. But I have a feeling that people who are violent, the majority of them tend to hurt themselves. They tend to self-harm. I would think the majority.
The majority, I would say so too.
I mean, we do have a mutual friend that has a son who was going through some terrible mental health issues, and the violence or the anger was always self-inflicted. And it's so sad when that happens and you can't control it because of a system. We were just talking how, it's hard to get help. It really is hard to get help. So the stigmas don't help at all. It makes it even worse. It's hard enough as it is. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And with that being said, too, another stigma is mental health problems are a sign of weakness. That is such a lie.
I think men have a really big problem with this one because they're taught to not share their feelings. They're taught to not have any feelings.
Right.
So to say I'm depressed and I need help, to them, they probably do feel like it's a real sign of weakness. But I think that's everyone can feel that way.
Unfortunately, 4 out of 5 people who take their own life are men. So I would totally agree with this, that they would see that as a weakness, because women, we kind of talk about our feelings more, but you can just tell by that statistic.
Right.
I got that from naming too. They always have great statistics.
That's so sad. And
it is.
And it's tied to the way that our society believes that men are supposed to be,
it really is.
And it's ridiculous, like that men cannot have feelings.
Yes.
And share those feelings. Oh my goodness. Share those feelings. That's a whole nother. We do need to change that, because people with mental health issues, if they're male, are just going to have a horrible time of it. And they don't need to. And that's
sad.
Yeah. It is sad to see someone go through something like that, and when there's a solution. I mean, it has nothing to do with strength or weakness. It's a medical disorder. And I think, like, if men could look at it like, okay, this is a medical disorder that needs treatment, the same way as, like, if I had an infection or if I broke my leg and I have to go to the doctor, it is like, it's the same type of thing.
It's still hard to get them to go to the doctor, even if they break.
Well, that's true. Anyone, women know that it's like, Kimberly, did you hear what you just said? My husband won't even go to the doctor.
Right.
Broke a bone, patched it up with duct tape. I'm good.
But it's the same, right? But it's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's the same reason. They fear what they don't. They fear the doctor too. Men aren't supposed to be weak. They're not supposed to be sick. They're not supposed to have to go to the doctor.
Right.
Yeah,
that's true.
It's, and with mental health issues, like, as for them being weak, there are factors that are involved in mental health that include, like, your genes or your brain chemistry, your life experiences, or your family history even. So that's like 4 things that, you have no control of.
Exactly.
You have, and especially your brain chemistry. A lot of people have chemical depression, and it's because our chemicals aren't right in our brain. So how is that our fault?
I always used to use the analogy, if you have diabetes, you're missing insulin. So, diabetes type 1. So you have to take a shot in order to regulate that hormone. Or, there's many, many illnesses where you actually have to take something to regulate that chemistry in your body. And this is no different. And I wish that more people felt that way, because it would take away some of the stigma and, surrounding having depression or something like that. Because it isn't their fault. It isn't our fault. No. Even men with, like, life experiences, immediately I thought of military men who suffer from PTSD. These are people who put their lives on the line every day and, develop PTSD. That's not their fault. They were trying to do an amazing thing and suffer for it. So
yes, definitely. It's very sad that they have to suffer mentally.
Right. And a lot of them don't want to get help either, because it's so ingrained in them that they're strong men.
It's really hard. It's really hard for them to talk about, from what I understand. Studies found that 70% to 90% of people reported an improvement in their symptoms when therapy and medications were a part of their treatment plan. So, therapy is definitely not a waste of time. I go to therapy.
I do too.
Therapy's helped me a lot.
Hmm. Me too.
Um,
And I think that you have to go to therapy. Medication alone is not going to solve the issue. It's definitely a
right,
great start, but working out some of that, you need to have some tools in your toolbox so that
definitely.
so that when things come up, you know what to do. Especially for guys with PTSD, I think that is so helpful for them, especially. And I shouldn't say guys because I have CPTSD. I know a lot of women who do.
I do too.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can all benefit from having those skills, and we learn those skills in therapy.
Right. And I haven't met many therapists that I don't like, but you know what is the little cool thing is that you can switch therapists at any time without having to say, "Hey, therapist, I don't like you. I want a new one." You
Hmm.
just call the thing and you say, we're just having a clash of personality, which happens sometimes. And the therapist usually knows that too. You know what I mean? Like they're not stupid. They can feel that you guys
Right.
aren't really getting along either.
Right.
And so you switch therapists and things can be just so much better sometimes.
And if your therapist
You
isn't
click.
challenging you a little bit, if your therapist isn't
Hmm.
working through things with you, uh, there's a lot of people who are good at manipulating their therapists. So it's kind of a
It's
waste of
true.
time if that's what you're doing. So again, I would switch therapists if you're not feeling like you're learning anything.
Right. And be absolutely honest with your therapist. That's what they're there for.
Exactly.
Um, they've heard it all.
Yeah, I'm
They've
sure
heard
they
it
have.
all.
I'm sure they have. A lot of people feel too that there's nothing that they can do to help someone with a mental health problem. I mean, a lot of people avoid people with mental health problems because they
Hmm.
really do feel like there's nothing they can do.
Right. Or they don't know what to do.
Hmm.
So we have a list.
Well, let's read it.
Yeah. So you can let them know you are there if they need you. It's
Right.
so easy. It's as simple as that.
That's really a good supportive thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Help them find mental health services they need. Okay. I want to stop and say something about this one. People think that people should just be able to do stuff on their own. When you are in a deep hole of depression in the deep, dark pit of hell, you
Hmm.
cannot, it's really hard to get yourself out. So if somebody comes and they actually help you, I mean, literally help you, sometimes literally helping you is calling around and finding out what insurance your doctor will take or how to get you into an appointment or taking you to an appointment or something like that.
Absolutely.
But sometimes people really need that like literal hand and pull, not just words, like they really need you to take them by the
Absolutely. Because, like you said, you just tell them to call a phone number. They're not necessarily going to do that.
hand. Yeah, guys, I know we post phone numbers. We post phone numbers too and
We do.
post phone
And we
numbers all
hope
over
that
social media,
we
but
do because sometimes they work and
yeah, they
uh,
do sometimes.
sometimes
Yeah,
people will call. Sometimes family members use those phone numbers. So it's not just people who are sick. Um,
right.
but yeah, I mean, if you find that somebody is just not taking the steps to help themselves, they need you.
They really do.
Hmm.
Just, learn about what they're going through. Treat them with respect and don't call them crazy. Don't call them psycho. Don't call them bipolar. If they're At one time, they thought I had bipolar, and this guy literally nicknamed me bipolar. How
Oh,
rude is
wow.
that? Like,
That is really rude.
it was horrible. It
Would he call
made
his
me,
friend who had cancer? Would he call him cancer? I seriously doubt it. This is
yeah,
what I mean.
exactly.
Like, it's horrible. Yeah.
Don't do that. It's not funny. Even if they laugh and, ha ha, it's really not funny, okay?
Hmm.
It's just
Yeah.
really not. You can express your support in ways they can understand.
That's a tricky
That,
one, actually, because you really kind of need to know the person, and you need to
yeah,
try different ways to reach them.
definitely. And get help for yourself if you need it. Sometimes you realize through helping others that you need to also get help for yourself.
Yeah, I think this is really helpful too for parents who I know a lot of parents who have mental health issues and then their kids end up having mental health issues as well, because it does kind of go down through families, like we had just said. If you get help for yourself, you're able to help your child. Like, you cannot pour from an empty cup. So make sure you're
Right.
healthy, make sure you're doing what you need to do, because your kids, no matter how old they are, how young they are, they will model themselves after you. And if they see you doing all the right things, they'll remember that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the most important thing is just don't give up on them. A lot of
Yeah.
people just, oh, well, they're unreachable, and, they're,
Or they expect
it's
too
so,
much of them, during an
right.
episode or whatever they may be going through. They expect way too much out of their behavior.
So I know a lot of people, I'm just going to use myself for example, like the times that I've really been down and stuff, and people will try to tell you how to feel.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you shouldn't feel that way. You have a child. You shouldn't feel lonely.
Oh,
You
that's a
have
good one.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have this and that. You shouldn't be depressed. But I don't. I'm not.
You have so much to be grateful
Right.
for.
I'm
Yeah.
not. Yeah, you have so much to be grateful for. That's another one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just try not to say those things to people because it really doesn't help. It really just kind of
I
makes
would
you
think
push
it makes you
away.
feel worse. It makes you feel worse because
Yeah.
then you're like, okay, not only am I feeling this way, I also don't appreciate these things. I'm a horrible mom, and I don't like, I'm not thankful for anything in my life. Oh my God. You know what I mean? So it makes things worse.
Right. There's one or two ways when you speak to somebody. You can speak life into somebody, or you can speak poison into somebody. And, you know, it's how you use your words. Just try to be understanding. If you don't understand, it's okay just to sit with somebody. You don't necessarily have to talk. Actually, I think I found the best thing is when I'm upset, is I like to talk about anything but what I'm upset about. Do you find that sometimes?
Absolutely. I think sometimes it's good to have a distraction.
Right. And then go back to it.
Right, but that's the point. You have to go back to it. Um, but yeah, I think a distraction is a great idea. Like, sometimes I'll get into my head too much, and it'll be hard for me. And fortunately, I have a husband that like pays attention to how I'm feeling, and he'll just drag me outside and we'll go for a walk, and we'll talk about
Right.
everything else. You know what I mean? And then maybe we'll talk
Exactly.
later. So I do think that's a good tactic. And just being there to really
Right.
listen, to hear what the person is saying to you, can help a lot, because they may be able to tell you and then not be able to tell their doctor later. So,
Right.
mhm,
And if they tell you they feel like hurting themselves, please don't say, no, you don't,
right,
or something like that. That's very dismissive of their feelings. And they're telling you that
for a reason.
for a reason. And you can say that they're attention seekers or whatever, but at that time, they do need attention. They need
Absolutely.
attention absolutely right at that moment
Hmm.
because something is bad happening. So it's an emergency.
And I gotta
So,
say, having been in that situation, it's hard to say those words. It's hard to say you feel.
oh my gosh.
So if you actually say the words, you're at that really scary point. So I really hope that everyone really hears what we're saying right now, because imagine how it would be. Imagine how you would feel if somebody said that and you just kind of said, well, you're seeking attention. And that was the last time you saw them,
Mm-hmm.
you
Because that
know?
can happen.
Yes,
Because
and
that
it does
pushes the
happen.
person, it pushes the person further into their suicidal ideations
Hmm.
when you do that. Like I have, quite honestly, I tried hard myself after I couldn't get anybody to help me. Like I just felt like nobody cared. So why should I care? You know what I mean? Like I just didn't have the right people at that time and I didn't have the right skills and stuff. But
Yeah, because I don't think people understand that people who are in that mind space, they really truly believe it would that others would be better off without them. They really
right,
truly believe that it's the only way for their pain to stop. they really truly
right.
believe that nobody will miss them. So
Right. And that's one of our things that we wanted to talk about was people who die by suicide are just attention seekers. And that's it's so
yeah,
sad when people say that. It really actually makes me very angry because suicide is a symptom of chronic depression.
right.
So people who threaten to take their lives, they need to be taken seriously. Even if you think then they're not a threat or they're whatever, you don't know. You do not know
Exactly.
what's going through that person's mind at that time.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean that you should have to call 911 right away. Talk to that person, see where that person is mentally. Don't just, we said before, don't just cut them off. Talk to them, see where they are mentally, see if you can help them get through that hard moment.
I think sometimes it can be very spontaneous when this sort of ideation happens.
Definitely
So
is.
having someone to sit with you until it passes, I think, is really important. They may not actually be a danger to themselves at that moment. So listening to them and trying to find out exactly where they're at, I think is good. And you'll know if the person needs that extra step, that extra help.
Right. It also helps take them away from that
Mm-hmm.
suicidal ideation because somebody is with them. So obviously somebody cares. And so it helps a little bit to take you past that.
Right. And in the future, they may trust you to tell you again. So, which is definitely
Definitely.
something you want to have happen. There's got to be somebody that will take them seriously and be there for them and try to understand rather than shame them for it.
Right.
Yeah.
And psychiatrists have said there is a stigma about every time somebody goes through an episode or whatever you want to call it, that they actually are made stronger mentally. This is not true. It actually makes you stronger, or it actually makes you weaker. It makes you like every time somebody tries to commit or tries to die by suicide, it makes them more likely to do it in the future.
Right. That's true. That's absolutely true. And
And
I hate
so,
that. Whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger is a bunch of BS. It's a bunch of BS because whatever
right.
you survive is still a trauma in your life that needs to be dealt with. And like you said, if you try it once, you're more likely to try again and possibly succeed. So,
Right. And
yeah.
it's people think that it actually, makes you mentally stronger, like your bones, like working out.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the same thing.
No,
It
not at all.
actually makes you mentally weaker. And
Right.
it's not it's a weakness, but you do have, like it
Well,
just
it's
messes
like,
with your brain even more.
yeah, well, it's also like anybody who quit smoking knows that they say, it may take you 15 times before you're successful because you're
Right.
practicing the act, you're planting the seed, they say all this stuff, right? So I believe it's the same idea where each time you try, you're that much closer because uh, you're I feel like your ideation is going to be that much stronger, but you will not be stronger. It's sort of like it takes over because you're practicing it, and uh,
Yes,
yeah.
it's
So,
exactly what it is. It's like I always went through the same routine all the time. It
mhm.
was always the same routine of how I would feel. I would call people, nobody wanted to talk to me, so I'd end up writing like this was when I was like 17 years old.
Mhm.
And then I would write all my friends like letters saying goodbye and stuff. And then that like snapped me out of what I was doing. Thank goodness. And it was just, nobody was there, like nobody understood I was a cutter because I had so much anger, and that didn't help. Like people didn't believe you, so you would go and cut yourself thinking that you're no good.
Right.
It's just you know, people
It,
say that
mhm.
these young kids growing up are really, I've said this before, that they're really soft, but I think that we need some softness in the world because
I do too. Some compassion. They're a lot more
our
compassionate.
words Yeah. Our words stay with people forever.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Which is why we need to talk about this so that people understand how much of an impact they can make.
Right.
I mean, okay, so for example, what about the media?
Oh my
Social
goodness.
media, social media. Um,
Right.
they've actually done studies that social media can lead to feelings of inadequacy because you're seeing all this stuff and you're seeing one part of somebody's life, a very whatever they want you to see. So,
Right.
but it can cause inadequacy feelings and also negative feelings about your appearance. Um, it
Yeah,
can.
it could be
Mhm,
about labels, and you just see all these shocking media images of violent mental illnesses,
mhm.
and it seems to just increase the expectation that those that are labeled mentally ill are physically harmful to others or
Right,
even themselves, you know what I
right,
mean? And
yeah,
it makes everybody more fearful of the individual,
right.
of
Because
such a of yeah.
well, they said too that there's a strong link between social media and an increased risk for depression, anxiety, loneliness, self-harm, and even suicidal thoughts. So,
Wow.
which is scary because the new generation is so strongly linked to social media. And then
Right.
when you look at like the news, I mean, even the news will like if there's like a mass shooter or something, like they're disturbed. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to laugh, y'all. They're
But you know what I
disturbed, all
mean?
right.
You know what I mean? Like
How
the
about they're
media doesn't,
mentally ill? They
right?
don't want to say
Because
the word mentally ill.
yeah, it doesn't help at all. Like it does not help. Even the media does not want to acknowledge mental illness.
And some of these movies, like, oh goodness, Shutter Island. Have you seen that movie?
No, I haven't.
No, anyway, I think it's the movie I'm thinking about that is about a psych hospital. And oh my God, it would make you scared to death to go into a psych hospital. And that's the way most psych movies are. Like,
Hmm.
they show the worst
The
of
worst circumstances. Yeah.
stances. Yeah, and I've been in psych hospitals before, guys. It's not that bad. It's definitely not what you see in the shows.
Oh, I'm sure it isn't. I haven't
You
been
might
there,
see
but
every now and then you might see somebody go off, and then
mhm.
they just take them in the little room, and usually they go night night for a little while.
They go night night.
Yeah, they go night night for a little while, wake up in a better mood, and
Right.
everything's okay.
Right.
So yeah, it's not like
Well, see that, and that's the thing. Like these are things that we need to change because
it makes them scared to go in to get help.
exactly, and they need
They're
to. Some people really, really need it. And the thing is too is like you can go into a place like that and you can just walk right out. Unless the judge has, a judge has made you stay, which is really, really hard to get done by a family member. Uh,
right,
yeah, like you can just walk in and you can just walk right back out. And there's a lot of people who actually need to stay and they don't realize they need to stay because of their mental health condition. So it's
right.
it's so tricky. Um, I know that doesn't have anything to do with stigma, but
Anytime,
it adds to the
right.
stigma because, I think it kind of adds to people thinking, well, it obviously doesn't work.
Well, anytime that I've been in, I had to sign a 3-day voluntary hold. So at least 3 days I had to be there.
Right.
And then if I decided to leave, they could court document me to stay there. And after 3 days, no telling what they have documented. So you end up staying pretty
It's
much.
not
So I
really
hate to
easy
say
to,
that, but
it's not easy to
it's
do
not
that though,
easy.
right? Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no, it's not that easy. You really have to be not, you know, not um fully treated yet.
Hmm.
You really have to be a harm to, society or something like
I
that.
think it's
Not
different
to
in
be
each
get
state
out.
as well
Yeah,
because I know people
definitely.
in the
Yeah.
state of Vermont who more than one person
Oh my
who
goodness.
really, really, really needed the help. It was obvious they needed the help. They went in and they came right back out, and there was no aftercare, there was no caseworker assigned. I mean, it's just horrible. And Vermont's not the only state that's dealing with that. It's sad. because these people get released and they haven't had the help that they need, and then then people are like, well, why would I go there? Look at this person, it didn't help them. So
Right. Or like we'll talk about in a future podcast, like the insurance kicks you out after so many days
yeah,
and you're not healed. And then there's
yeah,
a lot of people that have left and either committed homicide or committed suicide.
yep.
Um, I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
we,
preventative medicine, we could do a lot of preventative medicine. uh,
yeah, and the insurance, we need help just with mental health
the
in
United
the
States is
United
really,
States.
yeah, we're behind big time.
Yeah.
But that's like
This
you
is a
said,
crisis,
we are
people.
we are definitely going to cover this in a future podcast because it is really important to talk about, and it affects mental health patients and chronic illness patients. So it's definitely
Definitely.
something we all need to be talking about.
The National Alliance of Mental Illness, NAMI, offers some suggestions about what we can do as individuals to help reduce the stigma of mental illness. Starting off with talking openly about mental health, such as sharing on social media, is a really good one.
It is, because it gets out there, it spreads around fast.
Yes, it does. So
Hmm.
all the little memes you see and all that stuff, spread those. You never know who's going
Yep.
to see that needs to hear it that day.
Yep.
I'm telling you.
That's why we're always saying share, 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 like and share.
Right.
You never know who needs to
Right.
hear it, needs to see it, needs it in their view.
Definitely.
Hmm.
I've seen things that people post and it just was like resonated with me for the day or whatever. So, and I appreciated it.
Happens to me a lot too. Yeah, I agree with that.
It's good to educate yourself and others. Respond to misperceptions or negative comments by sharing the facts or experiences that you've had. Um,
That's a good one too, because a lot of other people still don't understand. There is a lot of misperceptions. There is a lot of stigma, and it's up to us to say, hey,
really, really,
speak
it
up.
is.
Yeah, you got to speak up. And if you can't, if this isn't something that you're good at, that's okay. But if you are, this is your advocacy right here.
Yeah,
We all have
right.
our part to play.
And it's not so easy always to start out, but sometimes after you do it the first time, even
Hmm.
with a little thing like saying, hey, you know what, it's not really nice to call her crazy or whatever, something like that, or I
Right.
don't know, anything that is, any of these things that you can do, even when if you start educating yourself,
Well,
you're
I
gonna
do.
want other
I
people not to be that way.
Well, I do want to say to everyone who's listening, and hopefully Angie already knows this, but Angie has been an advocate of mental health awareness for a really long time. And Angie is the reason that I started feeling okay about talking about mental health illnesses and things like that. Because before she started posting everything, I really felt ashamed of my situation and kept things to myself quite often. So she really inspired me. And I told her all the time how much she was inspiring me. And here I am now on a podcast telling everybody I'm bipolar. So, I mean, I've come a long way. And see, just the seeds that she planted made a huge difference in my life. So you never know who you are affecting and
You
how
really
much
don't.
you are. Yeah. Yeah.
Especially with your story.
Hmm.
If somebody hears that you have issues, even medical issues, when you have medical issues, it's the same with mental issues. You really identify with that person. You feel
Right.
more open with that person, and like you can go to that person. And
Yep.
sometimes our story is meant to be shared. So, but sometimes that's hard, and I understand. So,
Right. Right.
not
Yeah.
everybody can do that
It's like
right off the bat.
people in the lupus community. There are a lot of people in the lupus community who are like, should I tell my boss? Should I tell my coworkers? Should I share this with my friends? They have a lot of fear surrounding it because it's new to them. And, so there's
Right.
always somebody ahead of you on your journey, and there's always someone behind you. And do what you can because you're helping somebody.
And be conscious of your language, like we talked about earlier. Remind people that words matter. So that can be part of the advocacy, just reminding them that, hey, that is probably very hurtful.
Right.
And encourage the equality between physical and mental illness. Try to draw a line in comparisons to how would you treat somebody with cancer or diabetes or high blood pressure
I think cancer and
or
diabetes are amazing examples, but so many
yeah, I
other
do too.
illnesses could be used as well. And
Right.
I've noticed that that's something that I can do pretty easily. I feel comfortable talking about that. And I've noticed that it does make a difference. People kind of think about it and go, well, okay, I can understand that. And it's because my medical doctor did that with me and explained how chronic depression, happens and that it was a part of my, chronic illness. She helped me realize that that my mental illness was a physical illness, that they're very much one and the same.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, because if people really think about it, your brain runs your whole body. So
Right. Exactly.
if your brain doesn't work,
It's
your
that
heart doesn't
simple.
pump. So
Right. It's that simple.
so there we go. Don't be scared of what your brain doesn't do. Sometimes just being honest about treatment normalizes mental health treatment, just like, healthcare treatment. Like I say, oh yeah, I take an antidepressant, and just like somebody would say, oh yeah, I take a high blood pressure pill, or I
Right.
take a blood thinner, or
Mm-hmm.
it should be the same thing. But no, if I say that and somebody else says that, they look at me like, oh, you take an antidepressant, huh?
I know, and I can't stand that because it's good that you're taking it. I mean,
Right.
they should be happy for you that you're treating it instead of making you feel trying to shame you for taking care of yourself. Like, I don't understand that at all.
I really don't get it either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I
And then
think
it causes people to not want to get treatment. So again,
this is, yes, the stigmas just cause people not to want to get treatment.
and like if
And
if nobody's getting treatment, how think about what the community that you live in is like. If you live in a community where no one can get help and there's a lot of suffering going on, you need to be supportive so that
right.
people can get the care that they need.
Well, like we say, we're stronger together,
Mm-hmm.
and it helps when your community or your friends gather around you and
Lift you up.
they help you out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. You can find more information at NAMI Stigma Free Campaign. They are working to end stigma and create hope for those affected by mental illness. I love their I love NAMI. I really do. They do walks all over
Mm-hmm.
the world. I mean, not all over the world, all over the United States for suicide and stuff. It's great. So also, if you feel in crisis, please call the National Suicide Hotline at 800-273-8255 or text HOME, HOME, to 741-741.
Which I think is it's amazing that they finally have a text number because a lot of
Yes.
the younger generation feels way more comfortable texting.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people may feel a little better
Yeah,
texting than
actually, you're right.
calling,
Because I know in my times of deep depression, I would have rather texted. Yeah, I can see that.
because
Yeah.
you don't know exactly what to say sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes it's really hard to get the words out. So that's a great service, and I hope that everybody writes it down in case they need it someday. Hopefully they don't, but it's good to have.
Right. We definitely should post it on our
Website.
social media.
We will. We will definitely do that. So I know we've given you all a lot of information, and I hope it's been helpful. Angie, what is the mantra for the week?
I wish people could understand that the brain is the most important organ of our body. Just because you can't see mental illness like you can see a broken bone doesn't mean it's not as detrimental or devastating to a family or an individual.
Absolutely. And, the bottom line is we need to show compassion to one another. You never know what somebody is going through. So kindness can go a long way. You just you can't tell by looking at somebody what they're going through. So just,
You really can't.
yeah. We hope that you did enjoy this week's episode. I know it's a tough subject, but if you got something out of it, please like, share, follow, or subscribe. All of our social media information will be announced in just a moment. Please join us next week where we will be talking about grounding, which is an amazing topic. If you don't know what it is, listen in. You're going to learn a lot. Until then, please remember that we are always stronger together, and we'll see you next week.
Mask up. Peace out, guys.
Unified Through Chronic and Mental Illness can be found at anchor.fm/unified. There you can find all social media links as well as other ways to listen.